Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Now ladies and gentlemen, this is not a video about getting you to buy gold or getting you to want to buy gold. If you've been watching me for a while, you understand where I stand with gold and silver. I do believe that they preserve your purchasing power in the long term. In my opinion, it's not supposed to be used for an investment, but just to protect your purchasing power. Now it's very important that we understand who and why are they buying gold at these levels. The levels at which central banks are buying gold, ladies and gentlemen, this year in 2022 was the highest, I believe, since like 1964 or 1967. Maybe we'll find it here in one of these articles that I pulled up. But it's the who that's the most interesting part, and I think it tells a tale of what's going to happen to the currency's value that are held by Western nation. Now take a look at this right here. It says central banks start Q4, quarter four of this year, buying more gold. I highlighted a couple of spots that I think are very interesting, but I'm going to go over with you why it is so important of the question of who is buying and why are they buying in accordance with central banks around the world. It says here, according to data compiled by the World Gold Council, central banks globally added another 31 tons of gold to official reserves just in 1 month in October. The total central bank gold holdings are now at the highest levels since 1974, it says here, but I do believe there's another page from the World Economic Forum, by the way, that corrects that, and it's really since like 1960 something, but we'll get to that. Now let's take a quick look at this, ladies and gentlemen, before we carry on. This, as you can see, is from the WEF, right? W-E-F. Here's why so many central banks are buying gold. They're telling us straight out. They're putting it out there for everyone to see that wants to see why it is that central banks are buying so much gold. Let's take a look. It says here, central banks globally have accumulated gold reserves this year at a pace never seen since 1967, when the US dollar was still backed by the precious metal. The demand for gold this year has been primarily driven by a flight towards safer assets amid scorching inflation. So they themselves are telling you that if you want to fight inflation, that if you want to keep your purchasing power, that you want to buy some gold. It says here that the Central Bank of UAE was the largest gold buyer in October, which added up to over 9 tons to its gold reserve. So far, the UAE has increased its reserve by 18 tons. But what I want to point to you is this. Take a look at the names. The UAE, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Qatar, Cambodia, India. Right? India now owns 781 tons of gold, ranking it as the 9th largest gold holding country in the world. Right? Why are central banks stocking up on gold? Bloomberg offers an explanation. Bullion does have one crucial advantage, and when he says bullion, or when they say bullion, they mean gold. Right? Unlike bonds, which a bond is really a debt note. Okay, if you take a look at a Federal Reserve note, this is a debt note, right? This is not really an asset. It's a liability. And this is a little mini bond, if you want to think about it that way. So, unlike bonds, it does not bind you to a relationship with an unreliable counterparty. Now, think back of all of the countries that are really buying and are making up the masses of those that are buying gold at such a fast rate this year that goes back more than 50 years. Why are they buying it? Why? Because they don't want to deal or have a relationship with an unreliable counterparty. In a world where you can trust no one, it makes sense to bulletproof yourself with metal. Right? This is coming from Bloomberg. And we'll finish it off here, and then we'll get to the part that I think is very interesting. It says that central banks added 463 tons of gold to their reserves in 2021, which was 82% higher than 2020. This year, I believe they added 400 and some tons as well. Last year was the 12th consecutive year of net purchases. Why are all of these central banks, or why have they been buying more gold every year for the last 12 years, ladies and gentlemen. Over that time, central banks have bought a total of 5,692 tons of gold. Now, for those of you that maybe are not aware, the gold holdings that we have here in the United States, it's supposed to be about 8,300 tons or so. So when you take all of the central banks throughout the world that have purchased gold in the last 12 years, and those central banks are mainly central banks from the countries that we just mentioned, and it's getting close to the 8,000 that we have, I see something going on where I think that these countries that are importing or buying the most gold, they belong to a group. And let me show you what that group is. I had to pull up different websites in order to confirm that they were part of this, but I was able to. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. The Central Bank of UAE. And check this out, ladies and gentlemen. UAE, Uruguay, and Bangladesh joined the BRICS Development Bank of Emerging Economies. Now, that is the common denominator that I've found amongst the banks, central banks, that are buying gold. Is that these countries that are buying them at record pace belong to the BRICS nations, or belong to the BRICS Development Bank, right? Because they're going to join together in a banking system that is going to counter the one that we have here in the West. Let's take a look at our second one, Turkey. Turkey also bought roughly 9,000 tons of gold in October. So is Turkey part of the BRICS nations? Now this here shows who's part of the BRICS nations or want to become part of the BRICS nations. And you will see here that among those mentioned are Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Argentina, Egypt, Thailand, Indonesia, Nigeria, Senegal, and Saudi Arabia. Russian President Vladimir Putin has also personally invited Iran and Turkey to join the BRICS. So Turkey, we can pretty much say, is going to be part of the BRICS. We already got Uzbekistan. We already saw that Kazakhstan is there. Qatar, let's take a look and see if Qatar is going to be part of the BRICS or wants to be part of the BRICS. UAE and Qatar joined the BRICS. It's time to buy, they say here. And I'm pretty sure they're probably talking about gold, but Qatar is part of the BRICS as well, part of the BRICS nations. Cambodia, is Cambodia part of the BRICS nations? Well, let's take a look. Well, here they don't say that they are part of the BRICS nations, but I did find this little bit here that says China has also promised to help Cambodia improve its facilities to harvest and store rice, which leads me to believe that Cambodia is friendly with China, and therefore, if they're not already part of the BRICS nations, that they will be becoming part of the BRICS nations. So these are all the countries that are buying gold at an incredible pace. And to finish it off, we already know that India is part of the BRICS nations, right? BRI, I is for India. So India is also part of the BRICS nations. So ladies and gentlemen, why am I going over this with you? Because they can see the writing on the wall. These Eastern nations, they can see the writing on the wall. And they already have developed a financial system that they can take live once they have drawn as much gold out of the system as they possibly can. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, that these nations are very patient. So they've been silently buying gold more and more for years. What for? I believe that they're going to go ahead and challenge the reserve currency of the world, i.e. the Federal Reserve note, with their own either gold-backed currency or with gold being the reserve currency for those nations. They just have to put a price on it that's pretty much divided by all of the debt that all of those nations that join BRICS have. And then they will have a reserve currency that is 100% backed in gold, or that is gold itself. So what does this mean to you and me? What it means is that if this does occur and we have a dual financial system around the earth, meaning one that's backed by fiat currency, the currency that we currently use now, that's pretty much not backed by anything, right? And one that's backed by currency that is backed by gold and or by gold itself being the reserve currency, that means that the purchasing power of the fiat currency of the Western world is going to be extremely diminished. And it will mean that the things that we import into our nations will be very expensive for those of us that are going to be paying for those imports in dollars. Why? Because our dollars are fiat currency, which really are not backed up by anything with the exception of your labor. It is your labor, ladies and gentlemen, that backs up the Federal Reserve note. Why? Because all of the bonds that the government sells in order to borrow money, all of that interest is paid by who? By no one else other than the taxpayer. So if the taxpayer stopped working, let's say for all of a sudden they stopped working, how's the government going to be able to collect those taxes so that they can make the interest payments on the debt for the bonds that they have sold worldwide? So that is why it is you and me, it is the working tax-paying American that pretty much backs up the Federal Reserve note. And if our Federal Reserve note is not backed up by anything, at the same time that these BRIC nations back up their currency with gold or use gold as a reserve currency, then the valuation of the dollar is going to drop very hard, and it's going to affect every single person that does business in dollars, holds assets that are valued in dollars, or hold dollars altogether. That's why I've always been such a proponent of keeping some of your excess wealth in precious metals, because precious metals can never ever go to zero, but fiat currencies have proven throughout history that they always go to zero. Having said that, I hope you got something out of this, ladies and gentlemen. What's the point? What is the message? The message is this, is get prepared. Get all of those things that you need, like I've been preaching for years, right? And then once you have everything you need for an extended period of time, if you have excess wealth, meaning that you are in your filling in the gap part of your preparedness journey, then I would consider, I can't tell you what to do because I'm not a financial advisor, but I would consider turning some of that excess wealth into what I think is going to be used in order to take down what is now the Federal Reserve note, which is the reserve currency of the world. It may not happen tomorrow. It may take 10 years to happen. But why would anyone want to be saving their wealth in paper notes that they know will eventually go down to zero and they will be left in the streets with nothing? Having said that, I hope you got something out of this. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.